Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Lowe. I'm a staff writer at The Ankler, and we've got a great panel coming in right now. So let's introduce the stage. Starting from the right here, Will McIntosh, president of digital platforms and ventures at Versant, or Versant, really. Thank you. Will Brackett, head of partnerships at Kalshi. And Stacy Spikes, CEO of MoviePass. All right, this should be a great conversation. Prediction markets, such a fast-moving space right now, on track to become a billion-dollar space by 2030. Let's start off by introducing each of you. You come from very different areas as it pertains to prediction markets, so would love to learn a little bit more about your work. Stacy, you're closest. Why don't we start with you? MoviePass has had a heck of a roller coaster ride, and now you have Mogul entering the entertainment market. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So Stacy, CEO of MoviePass, we basically have a hybrid between a DFS product meets prediction market, which is called Mogul. And so if you're familiar with daily fantasy sports, you're kind of a manager of a team and you build that team and that you're dealing with real world numbers that happen in the real world. So with ours, you're a studio head, you're creating a studio head and you're competing against others who have their own studio and what they select and from actors, movies and directors, and you're competing. And so that's our product.
Hey everyone, I'm Will. I'm head of partnerships at Kalshi. And our team's responsible for our relationships with news, sports, media, big tech platforms, and excited to be here today.
Yeah, and then I'm Will McIntosh. I work with Versant, which is a relatively new public company that was carved out of Comcast and NBC Universal earlier this year. I oversee a couple of different business verticals, but the one that's most germane to this conversation is Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes, which are two, well-known brands in the movie and entertainment industry. And our experiences with predictive markets are primarily through a relationship that Versant initially architected with Kalshi for CNBC. And then I just happened to stumble upon the fact that Will and his team were trading markets around Rotten Tomatoes, tomato meter scores, and piqued my interest and had our group reach out. And we just did a very interesting pilot with them around Rotten Tomatoes and the Oscars.
Well, let's start with that, actually. Tell us more about this partnership around the Oscars and how it worked and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I'll start. So, me and the leadership team that are now kind of responsible for overseeing Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes, we just got involved with the brands 3 years ago. Rotten Tomatoes is a beloved brand, big audience, and it's been around for nearly 30 years, which makes me feel old. But a couple of things that we saw early on is we get a lot, the audience is big, every month, but they're not that engaged because the primary use case for Rotten Tomatoes, at least 3 years ago, was you come in to validate a score around what you already thought you wanted to watch, but you bounced in and out really quickly. And so we wanted to take that audience and make them much more engaged. And so we've done a variety of things to do that. But what was most appealing to me about what Will and Kalshi are doing is I see it as an engagement driver. I mean, the audience that's coming to Rotten Tomatoes to figure out what they're going to watch next, they're absolutely interested in things like award season and making predictions around who's going to win. And I think there's a lot of people who still don't really understand the fun and value that these predictive markets can bring with them. And then when we found out it's a big category for Will and the team, it just made sense to figure out a partnership.
Yeah, just to add to that, we think entertainment and culture is a huge opportunity for Kalshi. And when we talk to partners, we really try to convey the fact that we believe our markets and our data are the ultimate complement to their business, their platform, their content, but also for their audiences. And what we did around the Oscars is exactly what Bill said. Our markets are an amazing engagement tool. And it's an interesting way to think about how your audience is engaged with an experience, an award show, data on Rotten Tomatoes, a tomato meter. When you watch an award show, it's that 2 hours, that 3 hours, and you're done. But when you apply and you organically and authentically weave in prediction markets, you create this temporal variable where markets are showing you what's going to happen before, what's happening during, and it's almost like a retroactive after. And what we're starting to find is that partners really value that because it drives engagement, it drives discussion, and it's just a natural complement to what they have to offer.
Just one aside too. I was fortunate enough to go to the Oscars this year, and I sat behind some studio execs who won a lot that night, and they were on Kalshi all night during the Oscars.
Would you know what categories they were betting big on?
I can't divulge those secrets.
And then Stacy, tell us a little bit about how you see the future of these prediction markets really interacting with, the way consumers consume TV and film.
Yeah, just to piggyback on the engagement. So what we're already seeing is if you're trying to figure out what's going to happen, you're also going to go to the movie. So we're seeing a parallel with, so I know 75% of the time, if someone is a daily fantasy sports player, they're also likely to watch the game or go to the game. So it drives a whole nother level of engagement that maybe I wasn't going to go to see the movie, but now just because there's money involved, there's more of a likelihood.
You're literally invested.
So we're seeing that as well. So being a subscription company who's in the last mile business, which is getting butts in seats, exactly what both Will said. It is a engagement that happens months before. So in our game, you're playing the entire season. We break up the summer season, and then you have the winter season. So the whole year is broken into 2 seasons. So you're picking your picks really far out. And so as you get closer and closer to it, we find it increases the engagement among our members.
And Will, predominantly prediction markets are dominated by sports, as you alluded to earlier. What kind of growth are you seeing or are you predicting for the next couple of years in the entertainment and media space?
One interesting trend, and we've seen a lot of research about this. A16Z put out a paper. There's some independent research that's been out about this. What we're starting to see is that the sports category is actually becoming less and less important to Kalshi. And that's a product of these other categories becoming more and more important. We have markets across every category of human interest. And when we think about net new categories or categories that we're focusing on more like media, entertainment, culture, we see a ton of ways to work with partners. We see a ton of opportunity to grow those categories. And I think it's just, Kalshi market data is aligned with the incumbent user experience around media and culture. We're all in group chats. We're talking about what's going to happen next. The canonical example is the award show. Who's going to win? How are the odds changing? And when you do that authentically and you weave markets in and data into products and services and platforms with our partners, becomes a great experience. So, we're only seeing these net new categories like media and culture start, continuing to grow. And it's an awesome trend.
And I would just add, I think there's a lot of crossover between sports and movies in particular. And a good example of that is some people in the audience probably know the name Matt Berry. He's an analyst and fantasy pundit. And it's funny with what Stacy created. Matt tried to do this like 10 years ago, but didn't. It was a little early for the idea. But I just think that's a nice thing for us inside of Versant is we're focused on both sports and entertainment. We see a lot of crossover between the two.
The other thing, just to add to that, is sports will have seasons and then they'll go down. And then you can take a part of the audience who's not going to engage, right? Because maybe baseball doesn't love football and football doesn't love baseball. But with movies, it's 365 days a year. It never stops. Every day it's open and it's global. And quite often these release titles are happening all around the world at the same time. So it's a massive market. Where sports is regional and you tend to have these things go up and down and they stop and start. So we don't have cricket. UK's got cricket. Certain parts have baseball, but it's not a nice, smooth, big audience. And so movie going is 10 times larger, no matter what country you're in, than all sporting events combined. So in the US market, roughly approximately 100 million tickets are sold just for going to sporting events, right? And it's almost $100 a ticket. The average ticket price is closer to 10, and you have 10x the number of people that go. So it's a much bigger pie.
I want to talk about something that you brought up, Will, about it being part of, or maybe even replacing sort of that group chat, that social experience. I'm curious what you've all been seeing from your various vantage points of how this is changing consumer behavior and the way that they're engaging with, different TV shows and movies and live events.
Do you want to go first? Actually, you said replace. I think I say complement more than anything I say when I talk to partners, because we really believe that, whether it's our partnerships with leading news organizations, whether it's our partnerships with media companies, sports, we really see ourselves as providing another lens and a piece of data in the toolbox. When Harry Enton on CNN every morning around 9 o'clock is reporting about elections, it's an additive way to understand what's happening in the world. So it's never a replacement, it's a complement. And we're starting to see it become something that people are seeking out independently. One interesting stat about Kalshi is roughly 70% of people that come to Kalshi are coming for the information. When I talk to partners, I always say we provide signal in a really noisy world, and we provide you the ability to take action on that signal. And increasingly, we're seeing people come to Kalshi to understand, to get signal. So we see ourselves as a complement, and we're really excited about that. I don't know what you see.
Yeah, I would just say when you look across Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes, so Fandango is the #1 online movie ticketing provider in the U.S., with the #2 transactional video on demand platform in the U.S. behind Amazon. And then Rotten Tomatoes, I would say, has got the biggest socially engaged audience in terms of breadth. And within each of those is the concept of what we call the kind of the movie overview page. So people are bouncing in and out of those platforms, and at any given time, either looking to buy a movie ticket or look at a rating or review or buy or rent something in their home. And when Will and I were talking about the partnership, I mean, that's fertile ground for engagement. And if there's a market around, what's going to happen in a movie to be released in the future, if there's a market around award season and that's relevant to a movie or an actor or an actress, it all makes sense. I think the one thing we're really excited about is we're architecting a bigger partnership, is the idea that we have these people that are focused on this business every day. And we'll be able to work with Kalshi to create new markets and come up with creative ideas that maybe they're not even thinking about yet.
And just to add, and I think you probably have a good take on this, because living and working in the movie and the media entertainment space, everyone's an expert on something, right? Like it's so cool to watch people come to Kalshi and reflect and express their expertise on something. And we're really excited about that. I don't know what you see with your product.
Yeah. The other part is talking about the signal and the noise, right? I think that this is an evolution of social media, where this is a new form of social where it is not just a thumb up, thumb down, what you think in your comment. You're putting something real behind it, and the signal gets really clear when that happens. And I think it pulls bots out of the system. It puts you and your friends going in, and it's different when you do that, but say, go put $5 or $10 or $20 behind that. And that changes everything. And so I think that's what makes all of this really, really powerful. But it's an evolving social commentary that has never been, can happen because there's a phone and I can do something really quickly.
Now, this all speaks to the idea, too, though, when we talk about the current media and entertainment space, it's the attention economy, right? We're all continually competing for continued engagement, for those continued eyeballs. Sort of what does it say, though, that this level of engagement is almost necessary to try and pull more people in, to try and get them more engaged in the thing that they're already watching?
I mean, I think I don't know that I would say it's to pull more people in, but certain areas like daily fantasy sports had figured this out a long time ago. I think us in Hollywood, we're catching up to something that's been there for, I think 2018 was when the rules changed, the laws changed. So we're behind in catching up and bringing up the rear of, because the problem is you don't have a clean this person versus that person, or this team versus that team. So the data and information and everything hadn't been there to kind of figure it out. No one thought about, oh, I've got Rotten Tomatoes and there's a score, and when is that score going to be at what point in time? Like, no one had put all of that together. And so I think it's the right place at the right time for that to evolve. You couldn't have done it earlier than this.
Yeah, I would just, I'll probably answer the question a little bit differently, because I was part of NBC Sports when, FanDuel and DraftKings began to pivot from daily fantasy into betting. And one of the things we talked about a lot was how difficult those platforms made it for a novice to come in and place a bet. I mean, you even today, if you open up either of those apps, it's like it's almost like you need a betting degree from a university to figure out what you're looking at. What I love about Kalshi and the other predictive markets is they make it very easy. It's a lot of yes, no. It's like and I won't see it as like necessary to engage or pull people through. I just think it's very additive to the experiences that we're already focused on. And I think it's an interesting element, like betting is in the culture of the US in particular, but really the world. And the idea just to that you can make these predictions and put a little money on it, I think just makes it all more interesting.
If I can also add, I think you talked about attention. One thing I like to point to is if you open your phone and you look at your screen time, which it's a daunting thing to do. I challenge you to do it. You realize that you're spending most of your time, many hours a day, on a small handful of apps that are controlled by a black box algorithm. And then you layer on top of that influencers, creators, businesses that are telling you to buy something or think something. And by the way, that's one channeled algorithm and point of view that's reinforced. And now AI, we have content. It's very hard to tell what is real, what's not. And when you think about that content diet, that content flow, information flow, we feel strongly that it's a force for good. That you talk about signal and clean signal. It's really good to understand that if your algorithm is telling you that Timothée Chalamet is going to win Best Actor every day, it's probably useful to understand that the broader wisdom of the crowd actually thinks it might not be the case.
And then could you also address criticism around the kind of behavior that prediction markets fuel that it's prompting gambling addictions or gambling issues?
I can speak to questions about that. I think I go back to the two value props that I always point to when I talk to partners. We're signal in a very noisy world, and the ability to take action on that signal is very important. And we think we level the playing field. I think there's sometimes correlations or confusion about gambling and is this gambling? And there's a couple core differences. The first is regulation. We're a regulated financial exchange. Simple as that. The second is the product and the relationship with the customer. Kalshi is a financial exchange. There's no house. It's an order book. And what that translates to is a relationship with the user that doesn't have perverse incentives. We want people to win. If you go to a gambling site or a casino, they'll kick you out if you keep winning. And when they win, you lose. So there's a bunch of big differences. So this is all to say, I think the signal we provide is very valuable, whether it be media, entertainment, politics, business, whatever. And then the ability to take action on that signal is really good. We had a Kalshi research event a couple of weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to spend time with pro Kalshi traders from all over the world, experts in movies, politics, elections. They're taking their expertise, they're doing research, and they're trading and they're making money. They're able to pay for their education, pay off a loan, do it full time. So there's very stark differences, and we think this is a net good. Yeah, that's how we see it.
I think he said it.
All right. And then real quick, you mentioned the regulatory front. So it is regulated by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I mean, how are you viewing the regulatory environment this year?
I mean, I think we've made it clear, we're regulated by the CFTC. The CFTC is very clear on their guidelines, and that's how we operate. I think any confusion or conversation around questions about what is or isn't allowed, it's largely something that happens constantly over time. We see new businesses enter a space. Their product is better. It's better for users. It's a better relationship with the end customer. And then furthermore, the output is powerful signal for the world. And there are incumbent businesses and industries that don't like that because they've had a monopoly on attention, certain slices of a user experience or part of a behavior. And they're making noise about it. But we're very clear. I think our point of view, we reiterate it all the time. We're regulated by the CFTC, and the guidelines are crystal clear.
And to go back to your own individual platforms and partnerships, I want to talk about data for a moment. There are a lot of people here who are very interested in seeing what kind of interesting data that provides you, especially in real time, like say, the Oscars, when you're seeing real time reactions, when you're able to track volume. What are the most important metrics that you're all looking at and why?
Yeah, I mean, I can start on that. Like, if you look at, again, these brands that we have that are close to 30 years old, data for Fandango is very important. So we have a record of every movie ticket that we've ever sold, going back to when Fandango launched in the early 2000s. We've taken that data and we've turned it into a data product that we call Fandango 360. And we make that data available to our studio partners primarily so that they can do modeling and forecasting against how they expect movies to perform in the future versus what we've seen historically. They also can take those audiences and in an anonymized way, export and take them to other platforms to make their media dollars work much better. So for example, if you're advertising with Meta, they've got their own, targeting capabilities inside the platform. But we know that when a studio uses our data to go after the avid moviegoer inside of those ecosystems, that we outperform those social media's own algorithms and targeting tools. So that data is very important to us. And if you look at what if Fandango has a good year, we'll sell at least one movie ticket to somewhere between 15 and 20 million people. And that just builds on itself over time.
Yeah. The one thing I'll add to that, for us, we're a subscription service. So we see our businesses, there's the tentpole movies that people are going to go see, right? But the value add for subscription services where people are on the fence and they're not sure. And it becomes just a time factor because on a monthly basis, they're not paying more money, but they're willing to take a risk. They'll say, I'll take this 2 hours and I'll go. Another thing on the data that we saw was when people were heading home in their commute, if there was an accident on the highway, we saw an increase of usage of people just saying, I'm going to go to the movies while I let the traffic die down. We also saw that it increased movie going Monday through Thursday by more than 50%. So that was huge that we saw that big difference. And we started to tell studios in some of their marketing, people just think about Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or even just Thursday, Friday, like they won't spend on the weekend, and saying you really need to pay attention to these people in the middle of the week. And so that's another thing that we saw in the data that we didn't think of before. Like we wouldn't have guessed those things.
I think for us, the obvious one is the odds. But I would also highlight some of the different parts of our product, which are really exciting and we're tapping into and exploring with our partners. Every market has the basics, the odds, the resolution criteria, the title, the information links out to resolution information. But we have a comments section. I don't know if most people have visited for every market. And some of the most interesting, rich discourse about the topics are in those comment sections across all the categories.
What's the most interesting one you've seen recently?
I mean, the discussion about how in-depth people, we go back to the Oscars one, how in-depth people were describing like how the Oscars process works, how people make decisions, the performances, the analysis of their past movies, the trajectory, analogies to other actors. I mean, and replicate this across every category. So it's really interesting. So in addition to our odds, we see other parts of our product and product surfaces that are becoming great avenues to surface more data, but also great surfaces for our partners potentially as well.
Now let's talk about AI for a moment too. Is that something that factors into your work?
I know we ask ourselves, we know people are going to spin up AI agents and they're going to start to use them. And it's a conversation that we're having right now in real time. So they'll spin up an agent. They're going to say, go look at all of this. Tell me what you think. And one of the conversations we had, somewhat similar to what Will was saying, the difference is you're not playing against the house. You're playing against another person. So if you're playing chess and the person playing chess is sitting on a computer and you're playing against the computer, but you think you're playing against a person, what do you do with that? So I don't think you can stop a person on the side who's going to use an AI agent, but that is a conversation we're having. Is there an honor system? Is it, I'm flying blind? What do you do with that? Because it is going to be there.
Yeah, I think there's a couple areas. We use it as a company. We use it for surveillance. We invest heavily in surveillance technology to identify anomalous behavior. We use it to build our products, everything from software engineering to product development design. The next comment I would make about AI, and I touched on it before, is it's not going away. There is more and more AI content. I mean, go on any social media platform or ask your parents if they're around and ask them if, did you see this video? Is it real or not? It's really hard to tell. So we think that the more AI there is out there, the more important Kalshi prediction markets become. And then I think the last point would be, and it touches on what Stacy was saying, is as agentic AI becomes more prevalent and these agents do more and more work for us, for organizations, for an agent to be empowered with real-time wisdom of the crowd to make decisions and plan is important. But there's also a question about what is a future where they can take action and take action to hedge risk for your business, plan out for an organization, any number of different avenues of taking action in terms of what the agent's doing. So those are some areas.
Yeah, we're doing a few different things. I won't focus on the internal use cases, but we partnered with Microsoft and OpenAI early on and trained OpenAI's like our enterprise setup on the 30 years of Rotten Tomatoes data. And if you go to Rotten Tomatoes today, we actually have a chat agent that we call Artie that serves as a movie and streaming concierge. So that's one example. We're also working on things like automation of customer service. There's a lot of things you can do there. We're working on movie ticketing, integrations with all the major AI services, and there'll be more announced on those soon. So it's something we're very focused on.
And is there anything on the horizon that you guys are able to speak to that you're excited about coming in the back half of this year that you're working on?
We've been, Mogul, when we launched it, it wasn't for real money. So we wanted to put it out there and get a lot of the kinks worked out. So it had been for credits and for other things. So there's a real money version that's coming. So right now we're hoping to get it out in time for the summer, knock on wood. But that's really exciting for us that we're going to launch that and roll that out so people can start to really play it.
No specific announcements, but we're thrilled to continue to explore and work on partnerships with media and entertainment businesses like the ones on the stage today. We think it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I would just say that interestingly this year, Stacy and I are just coming out of a big event called CinemaCon, which happens in Las Vegas, happened earlier this week, where all the major studios and big cinema circuits get together in Las Vegas. There is a lot of momentum and buzz around the theatrical slate this year in particular, probably the best since 2019. And there's a lot of buzz just for the industry itself. for us, directly, we made an acquisition at the end of last year. We bought the fastest growing ticketing and point of sale system company that supports cinemas and theaters. We're very excited about getting more of our partners to use that. And, I think we're just very optimistic about what the future of the movie industry looks like.
And how are you all thinking about, so a question that's been floated to me is, when you're looking at a movie and you're predicting, what could happen in a movie, it's different from a live event, from a live sporting event. How do you sort of account for, a potential insider trading or, if that's kind of, I guess, the term that we would use for it, from the many people who work in the industry?
I can answer first. Do you want to go? Sure. So there's a couple of points there. The first is we took a regulated approach. When our founders, Tarek and Luana, created Kalshi, they very quickly approached a fork in the road. Back when Kalshi was created, they easily could have taken a left turn, built a business that was offshore, crypto-based, no anti-money laundering, KYC, rife with wash trading and insider trading, but they didn't do that. They took a hard right turn. They worked with regulators. In fact, we went to court with our regulators. We spent years without having material volume or much of a business because we know if you're going to build in financial services, you have to do it right. You have to be regulated. So the first point would be that the CFTC has very clear rules about how to operate and we stay within those rules. The second point I'd make is that we take it very seriously. We have a head of enforcement. We have a surveillance team. We leverage AI tools to identify anomalous trading. In fact, we've made it clear and highlighted some of these cases. Mr. Beast's producer, we monitored, identified, and reported that. Another case was a California politician who was insider trading. We monitored, identified, and reported that. So it's something we take seriously. And then I'd highlight as a last point, insider trading is bad for markets. It's not fair, on top of it being unethical. And we want to grow this business. We want to create a fair playing field. So it's part of our DNA as a company. It's clear how the regulators treat it, and we adhere to that, and we work on building that, the tools and the solutions and the teams. And you're seeing that with, cases that we're putting out there. And, it's important.
Yeah. And the one thing I was going to say, about the outcome in a movie, I'm old enough to remember when Dallas was on TV and it was Who Shot JR and our Game of Thrones and the Red Wedding and all of this stuff. Somebody knew the outcome, right? Somewhere. And so the fork in the road that we had was we had to make a decision that none of the things in the game are based on content. So the whole game is based on, imagine if there's a sporting event, but we say, how many people are going to be sitting in the stadium? So you're not doing how much was the box office, but you are trying to say, how many people are going to be in that theater? How many are, what do they think? And they can't all collectively get together and figure it out, which is similar to how Rotten Tomatoes is. So you want something that it's very hard to get people together to manipulate. And then you want something that nobody knows the outcome already. So that was a big deal that we had to figure out how to orchestrate around that. Even though it's really tempting, somebody knows the answer already.
Just to quickly build on that point, I think one often under-discussed reality is that a lot of what gets claimed as insider trading is in fact just deep, deep expertise. One of the best examples, and it's super interesting, was around the Nobel Prize market. So about a day or two before the Nobel Prize was announced, Kalshi markets spiked for a candidate that previously was not the favorite. And immediately there's a lot of very shallow takes, insider trading. In fact, because our business is built on experts who come and do research and use public information, the Nobel Prize website accidentally leaked a photo of the winner. And it was deep in the metadata of the website. And people that monitor that market, when they're scraping and calling the website, they found it and they traded on it. Same thing with halftime show performances. There were people in parking lots outside of the stadium, off the grounds, with advanced listening devices and, stopwatches, trying to understand what's going to happen. And, I started my career in markets as an ops guy. The truth is, this is incumbent behavior. Anyone who's worked on Wall Street knows that you send your analysts to the mall to click and watch how many people go in and out of a store. So a lot of what we see in terms of claims of insider trading, in fact, is just deep expertise. And anything that is actually not above board, we catch it, we monitor, we highlight it, and we report it.
Yeah, just one of the interesting byproducts of formalizing a partnership with Kalshi is it really forced us to look at some of what we were doing with, our internal employees. And then, like, if you think about Rotten Tomatoes with the critic community, and it in a healthy way forced us to put some policies in place that we really weren't thinking that much about. So I just think, we take it seriously, and we'll obviously work with whoever our partners are to do the same.
Well, I think we have a couple of minutes. I'm wondering if there are any questions from the audience. If anybody has a question for our prediction market leaders here, there should be a microphone that we have available to go around.
You mentioned the Nobel Peace Prize. What was the result of that? What did you do? Did you, you said it wasn't insider trading, but somebody found that metadata and leaked it. Did you pay out the winners?
In terms of who won or what the result was? Sure, a couple things. So the differentiation there is someone operating with material non-public information? By definition, that example, which is a great example, would be information in the public domain. So above board and clear. Every market on Kalshi has a resolution criteria. It's clearly listed. It's in the documentation that we send to regulators, and it points to the source where we resolve the market. So in this case, I'd have to pull up the exact source. Is it the website? Is it the Nobel organization? We look to the Nobel organization, at what point they will make the announcement, and then our market operations team would resolve the market. So that's how it would flow.
Good question. Anyone else? Well, in the meantime, I wonder, you've done a lot to educate us on the prediction markets today. Is there anything else that you feel like is a common misperception about the prediction markets or what you all do in relation to it that you want to talk about?
I mean, I feel like it's a couple variants of what I've been saying before. But I think markets are good, well-regulated, operationally sound, effective, clear, transparent markets are good because the signal is good. It's willing participants exchanging value in a transparent way. And when it comes to Kalshi, we have markets on every category of interest. So when those participants with deep expertise, everyone's an expert, we always say this, are coming to our markets, they're taking action on their expertise. They're able to make money, pay off a bill, or do it full time. And then they're contributing to the collective wisdom. And that makes us smarter, which is really good. And there's a lot, I said it before, there's a lot of noise. And to have this kind of flywheel of cutting through the noise is really powerful, and we're excited about it.
I'll just speak for movie fans. The trash talking and the ability to now get into stuff where before it's like, that movie sucks, is getting to go up to another level. And like I said, it creates another level of engagement. That used to just be among friends. And so one of the things in the first version that we dropped, everyone was playing in one pool, but now the V2 that we have coming allows people to create a separate pool just with their friends. And so you can get even more into the office or your friends, immediate friends. And so you'll see the same thing with Oscars and other things like that.
You could create your own little Oscar pool.
You're going to be able to do it in, the peer-to-peer groups rather than playing against the whole season and the whole league. So that's coming online as well, which is great. And all of the chats that are in there, we watch people in the chats, and it's crazy. It's so much fun. It's its own form. So what they're calling this overall space is, speculative entertainment, right? And so spec entertainment, we're seeing a whole level of entertainment because they are their own content. What they're doing with each other. We're just kind of this platform providing the structure, but they are their own entertainment and they're entertaining themselves with each other.
Yeah, I would just say I think it's all additive to the experiences we're trying to drive. And my guess is if Will disclosed what the average trade was on Kalshi, you'd probably be surprised at how small it is, because it is, and it'll probably shrink over time as more casual enthusiasts get involved. Also, like, I mean, I said it before, the reason I reached out to Kalshi initially is they were already creating markets on Rotten Tomatoes data. So I'd rather be a participant in it than a bystander. So I'd just leave it at that.
Well, let's close out. I want to know, what is the quirkiest, most eccentric market that you have all seen on the platform in the media and entertainment space? We have our own resident prediction markets writer at the Ankler, and he was telling me about some things like during late night shows, like, oh, they would talk about X, Y, and Z, or they would mention Timothy Chalamet or not. So what's the sort of most interesting and specific thing you've seen?
This, since we're not really the exact same, but what we saw was, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but, should Timothy be dating a Kardashian, and did that cost him the Oscar? Or was it about his comments on the opera and ballet, right? And even though a lot of the voting was already done, but the amount of chatter on that, so what we saw on some of the back stuff that we have is the next day, you can see that Michael B. Jordan went to number 1. Timothy went to number 2, but Timothy's sentiment level was very low, but Michael B. Jordan's sentiment level was in the 90s, right? And so that was really interesting, but to hear what they were talking about and some of the whys, the Monday morning quarterback, was very interesting.
I don't know if I have a quirky or interesting one. But outside of, the exciting collaborations we're doing with RT and, around movies, I think another interesting area, is music. I think music in a streaming world, understanding where artists are performing, and measuring that. I think there's a potential future where Kalshi prediction markets can help us understand who truly is out there and popular, and who's on the rise. So I think that also goes for a bunch of different categories and mediums, but I'd say music's an interesting category as well.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add. Will's the expert in the space.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Everybody give it up for Will, and Stacy here.
Thanks, you guys.